Let's move to this, and it's a question. What do you use your local post office for these days? And how easy is it to find a branch that's actually still open? For many, it's the place to quickly renew a car license disc or perhaps claim a social security grant. But its core business, mail services, seems to have just moved on towards privatised postal services because they seem to have cornered the market for safe delivery and dispatch of registered letters and parcels. Well, the South African Post Office has been through years of mismanagement, and of course we've already seen at least 90 of its 1,200 branches close. In fact, that's a very conservative estimate. In February, the Post Office was granted a provisional liquidation, but it seems hopes are now pinned on a business rescue process to keep at least some of the Post Office's doors open. That application is going to be heard next month. But this week in Parliament, it was revealed that 7,000 jobs need to be cut. This is the proposed action to try and salvage a trimmed-down, viable post office. Well, I'm joined now by Aubrey Tshabalala, Secretary of the Communication Workers Union. Thank you so much for joining us. I would imagine that you are dismayed to hear that 7,000 jobs have to be cut from the post office. Have you, as a union, been brought into the process to try and save the post office?
Well, absolutely. First and foremost, I want to say there's a hide-and-seek type of a game that the post office has been playing all along. But all of this rests on the shoulders of the government, because if you remember, even prior Mark Barnes, there were talks about turnaround strategies during his time where the unions was basically making significant input. Because if you correctly pointed out, the mail is shrinking, mainly because of technology and other avenues that are coming through. And our input was to say, let's speed up the process and uplift post office to a point where it's now on the technological level, because the business is moving towards the online buying or shopping. So you'll have your courier and postal services in that range. But what has happened is that they've liberalized the postal market. And once they're doing that, they close down the post office. So you find the private sector having a lunch of post office in that space. So our analysis on this matter is that basically there is no political will to salvage the post office in where it is. I mean, it was workers since 2007 who pointed out the maladministration from the post office, and up until Thuli Madonsela, the then public protector, agreed with us completely. What happened then, the government failed to implement the recommendations that Thuli Madonsela have been made. To this day, we've been making noise about the forensic financial audited statement. It's not forthcoming. The Auditor General have also agreed with us on that particular point. So to us, it's only a question of a political will around saving post office and that 7,000 jobs we're talking about.
Do you think it's inevitable that at least some jobs will be lost in this process?
Well, if you look at the current state, how the government is approaching the matter, it's going towards that direction. Let me give you a picture. 4 years ago, they said they wanted to retrench 6,000 workers. At that time, they reported they have about 17,000 workers. As we speak now, we have about, according to their report, about 11,000 workers. Why do you still have 6,000? But nevertheless, 2 months ago, they said 6,000. We went and engaged them at CCMA to a point that they couldn't answer some of the questions, including the financial statement. But then what happened? They then ran to the business rescue. They come and present in Parliament even before talking to us. Now the numbers shoot up from 6,000 to 7,000. What does it say to you? Absolutely no plan. It's huff and puffing, trying to shoot in the dark and see what is it that they can do. But the retrenchment is basically a closure of post office, because post office relies on its network, and its network depends on the human capital.
How many branches have been closed? Does anyone actually know?
Well, we don't believe the stats of post office. They said 123 branches and so forth. We think there's a high number of branches that have been closed. Almost in every area, branches have been closed across the country. We've been receiving calls from the grannies, from the old people, people living with disability, who don't have a transport to go to the next post office as theirs are closed. So we've been having that challenge. So retrenching workers, we are going back to that point. Those who are in the outskirts, those who are in the rural areas, won't get that particular service.
And this, for me, you know, I mean, I think the mail ship has sailed into private hands already. People do not trust the post office to get a registered parcel through. That's gone to the private sector. In this plan, there's a plan to purchase more than 450 vehicles to improve mail and parcel services. But at the same time, I'm not sure, and I'd love your opinion, but is that where they should be directing their energy?
I think that's a waste of time. It's a failed project, even before it starts. They had a fleet that they did away with it. They have, fast service that has been there that they dealt away with. You can't try to reinvent the wheel. We have to move with times. And
for me, just to interject, what you just said about the grannies waiting for their SASSA grants, surely that's the strength of the post office, that there are branches in areas where you don't have anything else. And wasn't that Mark Barnes's vision, is to create a post bank so that to really capitalize on that broad network? Is that vision off the cards now?
It's not, but the way the government is doing it, it appears to be off the card. But in addition to what you are saying, if you can take a minimum of 60% of government business, not a bailout, don't bail it out, give 60% of government business, we're talking national government, provincial government, local government, the hospitals, healthcare, the education, to use post office, that on its own is a bailout. So you can see how many opportunities are there for post office. It's actually a business with a lot of prospects. But you have to remodel the business. You can't be going as if things are normal. I mean, we have raised things of delivering of medicine to the poor and the destitute, the old mothers that normally pass on in the long queues in hospitals waiting for their chronic disease medication. Post office has an ability and capacity to do that. It's never been done, and it's going to a way of...
Those are great and innovative ideas. You know, as I was reading through the post office... their troubles, it just reminded me so much of SAA, and ultimately SAA, a lot of people lost their jobs. We have run out of time, but I want to ask you whether the workers that you represent, are they pinning their hopes on a business rescue? Are they hopeful that there can be some form of reimagined post office?
We, as the workers, ours is to fight now. That's why CW is going to join the court proceedings so that we make sure that we defend the interest of the workers, including their monies. Because if we leave these business people to conclude on the business rescue, workers will lose significantly, including the monies that they've all saved for those years. So Communication Workers Union is going to fight that battle.
When is that happening?
Well, the 4th of July, the court is going to be sitting, so we'll definitely join that process.
Now, you make such a good point that business rescue means great losses for the individual workers as well. Thank you so much for speaking to us. That, of course, is Aubrey Tshabalala, Communication Workers Union Secretary.